Okay, so believe it or not, in half a month, who can tell me what we talked about in general and where we ended up half a month ago? Your quiz for the night.
Daniel.
Yay.
Half a winner.
Daniel 2, I believe.
Okay, Daniel chapter 1, and we're gonna have another very quick review of that, like a 30-second review. And we actually got through the first 7 verses of Daniel chapter 2. However, as I uploaded that Bible study finally a couple days ago, and I think sent everybody a link maybe yesterday or the day before, I saw that the slides were not advancing in Daniel chapter 2, so I'm going to quickly go through those so they are recorded on record for anybody who wants to go back and review those with text and whatever else at there. We're going to go through those quickly, kind of as a refresher as well. But we do have somebody new here. We have a couple new. So I'm going to review why the book of Daniel is important. It's a little book. As a matter of fact, it would be considered a minor prophet. Why would Daniel be considered a minor prophet?
Jeremiah was the same time period?
Because we don't have much.
Yep.
It's not because Daniel is unimportant. He is one of the most important prophets of the Old Testament. It's just that it's only 12 chapters. So if we looked at Ezekiel, which is one of the biggest books in the Bible, or Isaiah, or Jeremiah, those would be considered major prophets because we have just a lot more content from them compared to Daniel. Would anybody like to tell me why they think that the book of Daniel is important? Thank you, Chuck.
It's
Something for Revelation to build upon.
yeah, it proves the past happened. It's good history, best history you could ever have.
Yeah.
Anybody would like a Bible? I got one right here as well. And it looks like we cleared the deck here while I was gone. People don't like my messy table apparently, that's fine. So everything got moved over here on the side. Quick, they need to grab anything, stop pointing up on that. It's okay.
True friends, Rhonda.
I know, I help you.
Oh, you're.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Oh,
All right. So I'm just gonna hit some highlights as to why I think the book of Daniel is important. It proves that God is in charge of history. Sometimes we doubt that. There was a gentleman who survived the Jewish Holocaust and wrote some of the most brutal literature about what it was like in the concentration camps. Died probably about 10 years ago. I'll think of his name here in a moment. But he was staying in line while they hung women and children in front of them and made them stand at attention in the concentration camp. And they did it in such a manner that they didn't break their necks, that it took many, many minutes of struggling and choking and trying to get their breath. A woman behind him said, God is dead. There can't possibly be a God with this brutality and with this torture and torment. And that's the biggest question that you as a Christian or as a Seventh-day Adventist have to answer to people who struggle with the question, why is there such horror? Why are there wars and murders and rapes and horrific things that go on if there is a God? Why can't he intervene? We love those miracle stories where God intervenes and something great happens and there's a good outcome. But I would say that most, if not many times, that's not the case. And we have to square the fact that God is in charge and that there are rules of engagement. He is all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, all-powerful. And yet it's really interesting that God has to step aside and allow most things to occur because of what was introduced in the Garden of Eden, and because sin was introduced to the planet as well. But we also have to understand that God sets up and takes down empires and kingdoms, and we're going to see this clearly as we go through, by the way, Daniel chapter 2 and the rest of the book of Daniel. And then, while God in Job chapter 1 does not torture, does not coerce, does not does not do things out of evil intent or revenge, does not have the human tendencies for aggression or the types of things that we would expect when bad things occur. We see who is responsible in Job chapter 1. The veil is pulled back, and we see who causes the destruction to Job's possessions, to his children. And it's not God, it's Lucifer. So the one factor that people omit or don't realize or don't believe in is this force for evil that is on the planet, that many times that God steps aside. Now in Job chapter 1, God says, yeah, go ahead. Well, many people would say God just threw Job under the bus. In Job chapter 1, you have Lucifer showing up, in my mind, to a meeting of the sons of God late, 20 minutes late. They're all there. They're all representing different corners of the universe. This is, a quarterly meeting, an annual meeting. Everybody who is in charge of a certain planet or area in the universe is there. And Lucifer strolls in down the center aisle so everybody can watch him, sits down on the front seat. And what he's saying is, I'm in charge of planet Earth. Adam and Eve ceded that authority to me when they gave in to the temptation and they rebelled against you. This is the perfect opportunity for God to have, like a long Christmas list, a list. You can see it rolling out into the aisle. He says, I want to, with everybody here as witness, tell you exactly what sin has done in this corner of the universe to this planet, to the people that are there, the sin, the disease, the viruses, the destruction, the murders that are taken, and God does none of that. It's astounding because that's what I would do. Fortunately, I'm not God. He says, where you been, Lucifer? And Lucifer takes another opportunity to take a shot at God. He says, ooh, I've been here, I've been there. I don't have curfew. I don't have 3 o'clock choir practices. I can come and go wherever and whenever I please and wherever I want to go, including at that point in time, wherever this meeting of the sons of God took place. And God says the one thing that can bring pain, maybe, to somebody who is in complete rebellion. Have you considered somebody who is not in complete rebellion? Somebody that, in Job chapter 1, God calls perfect, which Job was not, by the way. He was perfect in his desire to have a closer relationship with God. He was perfect in that before Jesus, this is Jehovah, put his robe of righteousness on him, so that when God looked at Job, he's seeing that robe of righteousness. He was perfect in that every day he'd get up in the morning and pray over his children for fear that one of them may even accidentally have sinned. This was Job. He was perfect in that he took care of the poor and the needy outside his gate and in the town where he lived as well. The land of Uz. Isn't that kind of cool? This is where Frank Baum got the whole idea of the Wizard of Oz, right? A lot of themes that we see in books and movies are actually stolen or ripped right out of the Bible. So the gauntlet now is thrown. Lucifer strolls in. He's poking God right in the eye in front of everybody in the universe. And God is saying, have you considered somebody who has not, you have not succeeded in your ability to doubt. And Lucifer says, that's right. Because whenever I try, there's a hedge of protection around him, his property and his family. I try to go under that hedge and you block me. I try to leapfrog over it and I bounce back because you blocked me. I try to go through it and you block me. But I'll tell you what, if you let me get to Job and do what I'd like to do with him, he will curse you to your face. The gauntlet has been thrown in front of the whole universe. So God said, okay, give it a try. And God stepped back to allow something that most individuals on the planet won't have to go through, as far as instantly everything that you have done in one fell swoop. Was it 10 kids? Gone immediately when Lucifer causes the roof where they were all gathered together to fall on them and crush every single one of them instantly. A wife who says, obviously, Job, you've done something really dastardly that you haven't told me about. Why don't you just curse God and get it over with and let him kill you? Which was the attitude that people had toward God then, and the attitude that we have toward God today. It's no different. I have a friend that would go through all his insurance documents and waivers, and everywhere it said, you know, when the tornado, the hurricane, the tsunami, the act of God takes place, it's not covered under this insurance coverage or waiver. He crossed that out and say act of Satan, because those are not acts of God, and we see this in Job chapter 1. So we have to look through the lens in John chapter 1, or 1 John rather, that God is love. We look through that, we have to interpret everything, the flood, what happened to Job and his children. Everything in the Bible must be interpreted through the fact that God is love. And that, whereas he doesn't cause or create misery or suffering or death or cancer, he takes responsibility for it. And that's an astounding thing. Because ultimately, he is in charge. There are times where he can tell Lucifer this far, no more. And there are times that we see horrific things take place on the planet where Lucifer appears to have free reign. We've seen this in genocides. We've seen this in the killing fields. We've seen this in communist regimes when they have come up in the revolutions that have taken place. The evils that have taken place on the planet over and over and over again. And this woman standing behind Elie Wiesel, which was the man who survived the Holocaust and the concentration camp, said, God is dead. And at that moment in time, that appeared to be the case to her. Anyway, many people came out of, many Jews, and it wasn't just Jews in concentration camps, came out agnostic and atheistic as a result of their experience. And many, like Corrie ten Boom, came out with her sister dying in her arms, with her faith even more confirmed in God, and spent the rest of her life as a testament to what God had done in her life, as well as her sister's life as well. So there's two different directions we can go. The lens that God is responsible for evil and destruction, or God is a God of love, and we look through the lens and understanding of what occurs even when it's horrific through that lens. And those are the two forks in the road there that you as a Christian must take and be able to explain when people come to you and say, God is a monster, he's horrific, you know, he's homophobic, he is this and that, and you must interpret God and the Bible through the lens that he is love and he is just. Justice will take place, there is grace, there is mercy, but at the end of the day, there will also be, that will be balanced by justice as well for those who have been responsible for the evil that has taken place.
I think.
Well, the simple answer that I can give is, if God stops anybody from doing anything, then he's a liar and he's no better than Satan. He gave people their free will and he cannot go back on it. So it's not him, it's the devil that's doing all that.
So there's two things that God could have done, and to Dana's point is he could have created automatons People that say, I love you, I will obey every word that you say. And that's not love. That is just simply creating a mechanism that will respond and say the things, which by the way is what artificial intelligence chatbots do. They're being designed to give you feedback, to give you assurance, to whisper in your ear, to say the things that you want to hear. God did not create you as a AI bot. He created you with the freedom to say, yes, I see the incredible love for you. How could I turn away from when I understand that tremendous love that you have? How could I reject that? Or on the other side of that, reject the love that God has and go the other direction. Because whenever you have free will, you also have the free will to reject God and rebel and go the opposite direction, which is exactly, it astounds me, Lucifer in 1 out of every 3 intelligent beings in corporate headquarters in heaven chose to rebel against God and go with Lucifer without even a second thought. And were given opportunity after opportunity before they were thrown out of heaven to change their mind, to, apologize, to come back into the fold and ultimately double down. 1 out of every 3. In my imagination, I see 1 out of every 3 that said, God created me. He knows, he knows what's best for me. I'm in a perfect environment. I'm siding with him. And in my imagination, 1 out of every 3 said, I don't know. Lucifer seems to have some good points. He thinks that we should have more freedom. God seems to have some good points. I'm just going to kind of sit on the sidelines and not choose one or the other, but I'm not going to open my mouth. And we have people like Ellen White, who was one of the founders of this church, say it was at the cross. When those beings saw the torture and the death of Jesus Christ on the cross, and Mel Gibson probably shows this very well in his movie The Passion, the brutality that occurred anyway, and said, okay, that's it. I have no sympathy at all for Lucifer and his agenda and his direction at this point in time. But until then, you had a contingency that were sitting on the fence in the universe that did not know who was right in this controversy. This is what we as Seventh Adventists call the great controversy. It's all about whether God is right and just, and he understands the best for us. And if we follow his law, we're only doing what's best for us. Isn't that ironic? If we follow God's law, we're only doing what is healthy, what is morally correct, what will give you longer life, commandment number 5, what will prevent you from going to jail, what will prevent your family from falling apart, that will draw you closer to God and have a closer relationship with him. A lot of people see the 10 Commandments or God's law as a burden. You're a legalist for following the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are simply this. They are what would be called intrinsic. They're simply how life works. God designed you in a particular way. And if you want to have life and more abundant life, as the psalmist, David would say, I love God's law. I take joy in it. There's so many positive things we see in the Old Testament concerning God's law, because it's only there to protect you, to bring you in close relationship with God, to keep you happy, to keep you healthy. That's what God's law does. And the argument is, I think they're too restrictive. I think I need to be able to do my own thing. I think that some of it is
That was my
good.
first thought.
I'll take some, I'll dispose the ones that I don't like. But I think I should be in charge of making that decision rather than God being in charge of it. And that's what the great controversy is about. Either Jesus Christ or Lucifer is right. There really is no middle ground. And as we wrap up, as we're going to see in Daniel here, the last moments before Jesus Christ comes again, there will be nobody on this planet sitting on the fence. You are going to be solidly is gonna be the seal of God. Or as we saw in Revelation, the mark of the beast. There will be no middle ground at all. Nobody's gonna say, I'm gonna just sit on my hands. In fact, and this is a terrible analogy, but there's a Rush song says that if you have not decided, you have already made your choice. So there is no, I'm just gonna sit on the sidelines and not make a choice between one or the other. I'm gonna be like Switzerland, I'm gonna be neutral. No, you're gonna be in one camp or the other. So Daniel contains detailed fulfilled Bible prophecy. Take a look at this again in chapter 2. It's the foundation of end time prophecy. It goes hand in glove with the book of Revelation, which we just got through. And in fact, it's I don't know if we're gonna get Clay and Susan back. But this is the reason I wanted to go back actually to the book of Daniel to give them an opportunity to take a look at that foundation for what we just went through in Revelation. It actually pinpoints the precise time when the Messiah was going to come on the scene. We're going to see this in Daniel chapter 9. Astounding. Precisely what's going to happen. What's going to happen 3.5 years after Jesus begins his ministry. We're going to see all of that in Daniel chapter 9, verses 27 to 29. It models faithful living in a hostile culture. We just saw this in Daniel chapter 1. We saw how diet played an important role in Nebuchadnezzar as the guy who was proctoring the final exams after a 3-year university degree, determined that they were how many times? 10 times smarter. And how you quantify that, it's just a lot. They're so much smarter and wiser at the age of 21 or whatever they were than my 55-year-old wise men, that their great grandchildren are going to show up as magi in the Middle East because of Daniel and his prophecies 3 years late to the birth of Jesus Christ. It comes right out of this region because we saw in Daniel chapter 1 and later in the book of Daniel that Daniel was in charge of the magi and the wise men. It points forward to Christ and his everlasting kingdom, the stone cut without hands. We're going to see this again in Daniel chapter 2. It carries the endorsement of Jesus himself. Jesus quotes the book of Daniel. So whenever somebody wants to throw Isaiah, the creation story, marriage, the book of Daniel, under the bus, I say, well, you know what? My favorite Bible commentator actually had quotes about those particular topics from those particular books. And, we can go around and around whether something was a myth, a fable, or actually true, which I'm in the minority here. I take what I read in the Bible as fact when it comes to Adam and Eve, when it comes to creation, a 6-day literal day creation, the flood that covered the whole earth. And by the way, whenever I travel the planet, which I've done, I see evidence of water everywhere I go. Did you realize, including Mount Everest and the tallest places on the planet, there are fossils of sea life? At one point in time, every single inch of this planet was underwater. Astoundingly, the Bible already told us that. Don't even have to go out and take a look at those fossils, but it provides evidence that everything was underwater at some point in time in the past. Daniel demonstrates God's care and deliverance. We like those miracle stories, right? We're going to see some in the book of Daniel. For his people under pressure and persecution and promised believers can claim in every generation. So this next slide here was the only one that showed up when I was talking about Daniel chapter 2 last time. And I'm going to hit it real quick here. This is what we saw in Daniel chapter 1. Again, it introduces God as who is in control. It gives King Jehoiakim, remember when we went through the whole history of the kingdoms and the civil wars and everything that occurred. God gives King Jehoiakim into Nebuchadnezzar's hand. God used people. We're going to see Cyrus used by God. We see Nebuchadnezzar used by God for a specific point in time and for a purpose. So Nebuchadnezzar, and this is in 605 BC, takes Daniel and his 3 friends to Babylon, a death march, either straight across the desert, which would have been the closest points between point A and point B, or potentially a 900+ mile march up through rivers and up to the north and then down to Babylon, which would have been to the east of Jerusalem. God gives Daniel grace and mercy, and God gives the four friends knowledge and skill. We see that in Daniel chapter 1. So real quickly, I'm just going to go through the first 7 verses, which we covered last time. I talk too much, so why don't I have you guys read this again for me? Who wants to start it? Daniel chapter 2, verse 1.
In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep break from him.
Okay, so we're gonna go clockwise, we're gonna come toward me this way.
Yeah, Wendy.
Then the king gave orders to call in the magicians, the conjurers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king.
And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream.
You know, we have Jeffrey online, we might have others as well. Jeffrey, would you like to read verse 4 for us, if you're there? And you're on mute at the moment.
Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the what is it? Interpretation.
The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut to pieces, and your house shall be made ash heap.
You said it's one. So this is one, yeah.
But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me great gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof.
They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through these slides and they didn't show up in our last recording. Just so that when you're reviewing, if you want to go back and review these that are on our YouTube channel, you can do that, and I'll have all the verses with the explanations here. You can always freeze those as we take a look at them as well. The king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. I broke down exactly what each of these categories meant in Babylon at that point in time. And verse 3, the king said to them, I had a dream. My spirit is troubled to know the dream. So it was upsetting to the most powerful man on the planet. Something occurred last night, and I'd like an explanation. So the Chaldeans, and it's interesting that Daniel chapter 2, verse 4 here, all the way through Daniel chapter 7, are written originally in their language, in Aramaic. Whereas the rest of the book of Daniel is in Hebrew. So when we have testimonials, for instance, that are given by Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man on the planet, they're actually written by him in his language, which is really kind of fascinating, a little trivia there for you. So the magicians, sorcerers, and astrologers, we're going to find aren't going to be very helpful. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word for me is firm, and I have some severe consequences for you. I'm not sure if Nebuchadnezzar actually forgot the dream. I think it was probably pretty vivid. Sometimes when you wake up, something was very vivid and you have a very short-term memory on dreams that occurred during the night. So that's also a very good possibility. But I suspect because he's young, he's in his prime, he is conquering the known world, the empire of Babylon is expanding under Nebuchadnezzar. his father, Nabonidus, is somewhere else. Nabonidus apparently didn't have a well. His father first established the Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar takes it to its peak. I guess is all I'll say about that at the moment. These are people that he likely inherited from his father. I suspect that he might have been a little skeptical about their claims of being in touch with the spirit world and the gods and having special powers. Great opportunity. You know, if you know things that nobody else does, then you tell me what it is that I dreamed in my bedroom, in my bed last night, and then I'll believe that you really are in touch with the spirit world that can reveal things like that. Now, here's something interesting about Lucifer and the angels that went with him. They can't read your mind. Now, they can read facial expressions, but they don't know what's going on up here, which is probably fortunate some of the time. They can plant ideas or suggestions. In fact, it was either Roger Morneau or Ellen White that stated that as Charles Darwin sat down and is thinking through Origin of the Species, the book that was released, I believe, in 1859, on essentially evolution, that Lucifer himself sat right next to him and engaged Charles Darwin in however he could in his thought process as he's thinking through what would life and origins have been like if there is nothing supernatural, if there is no God, what then? Well, at the age of 20, actually I think it was 19 even, on the voyage of the HMS Beagle, that's kind of a fun ship name, to the Galapagos Islands. I remember as I was going from island to island that there were birds. They were finches. They were all finches. They were all birds, but their beaks had little variations to them because on this particular island, they had to work a little bit harder to get this seed, or on this one to get that nut, or this one to get that grub, or whatever the case may be. And so over time, little adaptations, what I would call microevolution, although that's a poor term as well, occurred so that the birds that were able to get that food source because of little adaptations here or there were able to survive. They got the food source better than the ones that didn't have the beaks or the ability to get that food source. So Charles Darwin is thinking, well, if we take this far enough back and we have enough of these little changes occur over time, what if every single thing we see on the planet, the banana trees, the elephants, the tigers, the human beings, all came from one simple cell, which, by the way, is the same thought about the Big Bang. And that is, well, we can see that the universe is expanding at a rapid rate. So if we reverse things, then we bring the universe in, and what if it was no bigger than the dot on this page, and then everything exploded out of that dot and became what we have in the universe today, trillions and trillions and trillions of stars and all the planets and things that revolve around them and the galaxies, the same basic concept or idea. If we take things back far, what if we start playing, we weren't there obviously, fantasy games to some degree on if we just throw everything out the window and we just kind of fantasize about what might have happened. This is what Darwin is doing with Lucifer sitting right beside him. So my point is, he can't read your mind, but he can see your expression, he can see your thought process, he can see what you're working on. And he has some ability. He is much smarter than I am and you are. He's been around for many thousands of years. He has perfected the art, and he knows my weak points and he knows your weak points by studying each one of you. We're fortunate that when you were born, you were also given a guardian angel who is much bigger than you are and much stronger than we are to provide that protection for you. Otherwise, Lucifer, if he had his way, would have destroyed you long ago. Some cases, he destroys you slowly through the choices and the directions that we take. And sometimes because as a result of sin, there are environmental factors and genetic factors and other things that lead to bad things that occur, in our genes as well. So this is Nebuchadnezzar. I'm going to give you fabulous riches beyond your imagination. If you just tell me what it is, two things. Tell me what it is that I dreamed in my bed last night, but I also need to understand what it meant. Did Nebuchadnezzar remember that dream and was playing with the astrologers and Chaldeans and soothsayers? I don't know, but this is what he laid down.
Could have taken it away from us.
Well, again, dreams typically, I have found that unless you wake up and write it down, are in a very short-term memory process. I have had very vivid dreams where within an hour of waking up, I can't even remember what that was. Even though when I woke up, I did, which is really odd, isn't it? You wake up and man, that was an interesting dream about, and then an hour later, you can't even remember what that was.
But there's stories of that happening to Ellen White. For a whole year, she couldn't remember to tell it happened.
That's true. There's interesting stories, and I have books in here that some might be interested in. I'll introduce them to the church over time, pull something out of my goodie box here and talk about it. And it'll be for giving away or for lending or for a library, whatever the case may be. I have all kinds of stuff in here, but Ellen White had visions about, let's give you a quick example, and she was one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, about printing material and printing presses. And she gets on a ship and she travels to Europe. It's probably in Switzerland or someplace like that. And she walks into a printing house that had been established. Oh yeah, I've seen this in a vision. And there's a gentleman, and she describes him, that's working somewhere over in an office here. She goes over, gets introduced to him, but she had already seen this previously in a vision. I don't know if that's the story you're talking about, but there's similar ones that are really kind of fun about Ellen White. All right, so there's great gifts and rewards, but if not, it's really not going to go well for you. So they probably as respectfully as possible said, come on, Dan, tell us the dream, and then we'll make something up. I mean, we'll let the interpretation, right?
Yeah.
So it's not hard to come up with something if somebody, I could make something up.
Hey,
Yeah.
man, what he did in poker, they calling your bluff.
Right. So I think Nebuchadnezzar, and he was a brilliant, which was also his downfall. I think that he was a wizard at mathematics and engineering. I think he himself personally designed one of the wonders of the world, which was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is basically a constructed mountain covered with foliage and flowers and all kinds of things that I believe that you could actually climb with stairs and go on different levels and somehow have irrigation automatically pumped to all these levels to keep all these things alive, because Babylon was in this big plain. It was flat as a pancake. It didn't even have the Sutter Buttes in there. So the story anyway is that he marries somebody who is from a mountainous region and she's feeling homesick. He said, don't worry, honey, I'm going to build a mountain just for you. And that's the myth anyway behind how the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were created. All right. So now after 35 minutes, we are ready to begin. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 8. So I think it's Melvin.
Yes.
The king answered and said, I know for certain that you have gained time, because you see that my decision is firm.
All right, so I'm going to give Jeffrey another shot here. If you can hear me, Jeffrey, if you'd like to read verse 9, please go ahead.
If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and the corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Do we have anybody else online? I can only see Jeffrey at the moment. If there's anybody else, shout out to me. If not, we're gonna go ahead, verse 10 to Amy.
The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean.
And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king, except the God who dwells is not with the flesh.
All right, so let's break this down. Verse 8 and 9 says the king, Nebuchadnezzar, answered all these different groups. Each of them had specialties. Some of them were just considered to be very highly educated with multiple PhDs. So when you have a difficult question or you want some guidance, most kings had these people that they would have surround themselves with. Sometimes it was one guy who is just considered to be one of the smartest people in the, I need to figure out how to get to the moon. Call Elon Musk in. It's, I don't know, something like that, right? Elon Musk says, no problem, okay. I'm gonna create SpaceX and we're gonna make this rocket. What's a rocket? Okay, just having a little fun there. So you have those people, but then you also have those that theoretically are the priests to the gods and the temples. And by the way, there were many gods in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar had a favorite god. We took a look at this in Daniel chapter 1 as well. All this is online, by the way. I send everybody who has given me a cell phone the link to the presentations we've done in the past. And so he tells all of them, I'm no idiot here. All you guys have colluded to lie to me. So that if I did give you the dream that I had last night, you've already decided how you're gonna make up a story to tell me. But since you're all here and you tell me that some of you are directly in touch with the gods, because you're the high priest over there, you say that you go and commune with them every morning at the temple, and they know secret things. Between all of you standing here, somebody should be able to come forward and tell me what it is that I have dreamed, and then you can also tell me the interpretation of that. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words, says Nebuchadnezzar. He's not pulling any punches, is he? He says, you have agreed to speak lying, corrupt words till times change. So in the Far East and in Babylon at that time, there was a superstition around fortunate days. So you could put things off. You could say, you know what, let me check the astrological chart here to find the right fortunate day for interpretation of dreams that people have. That's not until next Thursday. Okay. So you know what? You're just going to come up with ways to stall and things to just invent stories. This is it. You tell me what it is that I dream, and you give me the interpretation now, or you're all done for. All right. So not just the dream, but you also have to tell me what it means. And of course, they were honest and said, nobody has ever asked this here in verse 10. There's not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. So the Chaldeans answered, these are the sorcerers. They use the occult. They were possibly the power group at that time in Babylon. And they acknowledge right now, transparently, to King Nebuchadnezzar that they do not have any supernatural powers to be able to tell him what he dreamed in his bed. And they say, there is no known precedent. We've gone through all the literature. Nobody has ever asked this. We've gone to the library in Egypt that has all the records there. We see, no pharaoh has ever even has asked, tell me the dream I had in my bed last night and interpret it. You'd be the first one, King Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 11, the thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. So they emphasize the challenge being presented by the king. It's outside of human ability, which of course is setting the stage for Daniel. Isn't this nice? They're transparently saying there's no human element or ability to provide what it is that you're asking for. The Chaldean sorcerers, despite all the pagan temples, admit that they do not have direct access to the world of gods or the ability to answer questions like Nebuchadnezzar is asking. All right, so we have verse 12.
For this cause the king was angry and very furious, commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon.
And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his followers began to be slain.
Then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment to Arioch, the captain of the king's bodyguard, who had gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. How do you say that, Arioch?
Area.
And he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel.
So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time that he might tell the king and the interpretation.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's all we're gonna get to. Just through verse 16.
16.
Yeah. All right. So the answer the Chaldeans provided did not help the king out at all. Did not help us move. He was not happy, did not appease him. And so right there, he calls for his bodyguard. I want you to go out and take out everybody that is represented by the individuals that are in my bedroom right now. Didn't have all the Chaldeans or the astrologers or the sorcerers in the room. These were the chairpersons or the high priests or the representatives. There were a whole bunch out there in the empire, and I want you to go out tonight and take care of it. All right, so who is it? I'm here to kill you. Please open the door. Give me 10 minutes. So the wise men are about to go verse 13, and they go and knock on Daniel's door and his companion's door to kill them. I'm thinking that they're not living in a dorm apartment where they're all together in one room. But Daniel has a question, verse 14. So Arioch is the captain of the king's guard, and I imagine that it's not just Arioch, there's probably a whole contingency with him to make sure that the king's orders are being taken, taken care of very effectively and efficiently. And Daniel, you'll notice, is respectful. He answers with prudence, which you should do when somebody has come to kill you. Daniel also had a very good reputation, by the way. His name, it's interesting. All of you and me have reputations. We all do. And good reputations probably don't go as far, unfortunately, as bad reputations, right? But Daniel's reputation had gone far and wide. And he was known to be honest. He was known to have integrity. The people who were in charge of him, if you remember in Daniel chapter 1, really, really liked him.
Yeah.
And I think that God certainly gave favor to Daniel in his manner of communication and the way he spoke. I don't know if he told funny Babylonian jokes, what Daniel did, but wherever he went, he gained the respect and understanding of people, including Arioch, the guy who was come to kill him. So Daniel is asking a question here. Why are you killing me so quickly here? You know, where I come from, it generally requires some kind of trial with witnesses, and I don't even know what the accusation is. And so then Arioch lays out, well, you see, the king had this dream last night, and he pulled all the representatives, including the guy who's in charge of your group, and called them in, and this is what he asked of them, and they were no help to him, and he wasn't happy. And so he said, Arioch, go out and make sure that all the people associated with these groups are dead by morning. And so Daniel's patiently listening to all this. And verse 16. There's a gap there somehow. How in the world is somebody who's supposed to be killed in the doorway of his house all of a sudden in the presence of the king? This kind of indicates the reputation, the good reputation that Daniel had, and apparently the ability to persuade, but also the protection that God put over Daniel, I think is extremely important as well, because Daniel had maybe more than one guardian angel, I don't know. But we can see through the book of Daniel that whoever it is working overtime, and many of the circumstances surrounding Daniel. So Daniel went in and requested time, similar to the story of Esther, which, by the way, is 120 years after this story. And it apparently is at the hitman's recommendation. I've come to kill you, but you know what? You've made some good points here, Daniel. Here, let me take you into a situation. It's like, are you kidding me? The guy who's so angry, he says, get out there now and start killing. And now he's gonna bring one of these guys in still alive, with his head still, attached to him, not beat up or mutilated at all. This could be, kind of dangerous for Arioch, right? So Nebuchadnezzar accused the Chaldeans of stalling, but accepts Daniel's offer. Does he remember that there were none equal in wisdom, which we saw in Daniel chapter 1, verse 20? Mm-hmm. All right, so who are we at on verse 17?
And Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his champions.
That they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon.
Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven.
Amen.
Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his.
All right, so now we're missing some more important things here that just aren't there. There's nothing in the conversation that must have occurred between Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. All of a sudden, it's Daniel is going to see the king, and now he's in his house praying that God will reveal the secret to him. And he's calling all his friends, which, interestingly enough, are not in the Babylonian names, you see, but in the Hebrew names, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. His house, because of maybe his status or the position that he had, appeared to be close to the palace, so it wasn't a long distance away, apparently. And his friends may have met him there. Hebrews 4:16. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. From the God of heaven is what Daniel is asking for. There's lots of gods in Babylon, but Daniel is very specific that there's only one that he's going to pray to. And the title is first presented in Genesis chapter 24, verse 7. Verse 19 says, then the mystery was revealed to Daniel. It's not a dream, but rather a vision that repeats the king's dream down to a T. And it's interesting in verse 19 that Daniel doesn't have to go and check with Nebuchadnezzar. Now, let me check Nebuchadnezzar. Was there this, really big statue that appeared, oh, yeah, that was kind of like mine too. And was the head really kind of, shiny and like, yeah, yours was too? He didn't do any of that. Before he even hits the palace door, he knows precisely that God has laid out the same dream that was given to Nebuchadnezzar before he even has that conversation, and he praises God. We see in Daniel chapter 2 as well, for giving him the information not only of what the dream, but also the interpretation. Verse 20, Daniel says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might." Psalm chapter 41, which Daniel probably knew very well. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Doxology, praise God from whom all blessings flow, is exactly where we get those words. God is the one who supplies all wisdom and has a might superior to the most powerful kings on earth. And now, verse 21. So Jeffrey, we're gonna go to you if you'd like to read verse 21 for us.
He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding.
He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him.
I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desire of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matters.
Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, "Destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation."
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look at verse 21. He changes times and seasons. God orders earthly events. He removes and sets up kings, which is exactly what we were saying as we set up the book of Daniel. He controls the rise and fall of whole empires, which we're going to see in this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, revealed to a pagan king by God himself. Gives wisdom and knowledge. Jeremiah 32:19 says, "Great in counsel and mighty in work, for thine eyes are open upon all the ways of the sons of men, to give everyone according to his ways and according to the fruits of his doings." Verse 22, he reveals deep and hidden things. We can go to Job chapter 12, verse 22. He uncovers deep things out of darkness and brings the shadow of death to light. He knows what is in darkness. Psalm 139:12. "Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you." And Psalm 36:9, "Light dwells with him, for with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light." Verse 23, "I give thanks and praise to you. There's only one deserving of our praise." And Daniel is acknowledging that. "You are the God of my fathers." He acknowledges the whole history of a chosen group of people, Israel, and how God has been central through protecting and bringing that group along and protecting them. "You give me wisdom and might." God has wisdom and might, and he's now sharing that with Daniel. "And you have made known what we asked." God revealed Nebuchadnezzar's dream and interpretation. So Daniel is praising God for revealing not only the dream, but the interpretation. And you'll see in verse 24 that he's not just thankful for saving my neck. Look at what he says. "Therefore Daniel went into Arioch, the hitman, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, 'Don't kill me.' No, he says, 'Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Stop the slaughter.' I'm guessing that there are the king's hitmen already out in the streets going door to door. Please send the word out to stop. God has revealed the dream and the interpretation, so please don't have anybody else killed. Bring me in before Nebuchadnezzar, and I will show the king the interpretation." So only officers had direct access to the king, so Daniel goes directly to the guy who has that access. And he is asking to stay the execution of all the other people, who, by the way, didn't have Daniel's best interest in mind, we'll find later in the book of Daniel, despite Daniel going above and beyond to try to protect and preserve them. He's actually concerned for the welfare of pagan priests and people who are essentially hypocrites and lying about their abilities and supernatural, contacts. And says, I will show the interpretation. Present to the king what he was demanding of the wise men, which they were unable to provide. All right,
I love that.
so we are going to stop there. I am on the edge of my seat. It's gonna be so exciting to find out what happens next. I'm not sure if I can wait a whole week. We're gonna do our best. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the book of Daniel, for you revealing secret things. You say that you do nothing without revealing secrets to your prophets, and they in turn provide that to us. And we're thankful for Daniel and other prophets in the Bible that have done just that, not just for Nebuchadnezzar, but it's for our benefit as well. We thank you for that. I ask that we be diligent in our Bible study, and that you reveal not only things that have occurred in the past, but who you are, because our job is to reflect you better each day. And I pray that, and I ask for your protection around each person tonight until we get together again in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.